Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Secret Origins of Mint Condition. I am one of your hosts, James, and we are back on Battle World to wrap up the second half of the original Secret Wars written by Jim Shooter with art by the great Mike Zeck. And joining me to do that, of course, is Joe.
Hey folks, how you doing?
And welcoming back, depending on how this is airing, is our other host.
Hey y'all, I might have just
maybe forgot
wandered
in
back
Battle
into the
World,
cave like Spider
Chris.
Woman and just took me a minute. That's all. It just took me a minute.
And of course, the man who is going to lead us out of Battle World, battling the Beyonder, is our returning master of the Marvel Mystic Arts. Arco Esposito is with us.
Thank you very much. These intros get better and better, but thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it, guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so Arco, I am kind of gonna turn it over to you. I think we're gonna kind of do the format that we've been doing recently with our that we started with our Crisis episode, and we'll be in your Galactus episode. Is kind of doing a recap, but at the same time, kind of going over the story and going over the plot points. I think you and Joe have kindly done the summaries.
Yeah.
But I'll start it off for you. Where do you want to be? I guess we're going to do any recap of the last issue. We just want to jump into the back six.
You know what? Recap real fast. The Beyonder swooped up on Earth and took all the villains and the heroes in the Marvel Universe and pitted them against each other to give them their heart's desires. Since then, they have been a couple of skirmishes, nothing too crazy, and where we left off, we have where did we leave off? Issue 6, we have the Wasp, I believe, being shot through the chest in the swamps with the lizard, and there is somebody hiding in the shadows in the hero's base. So that's where we left off. Quick recap, but I think we all know where we are with Secret Wars at this point. So going into issue 7, Joe, whatever I missed, please help me out. Issue 7 is when the action on the back half really starts kicking off, and it starts out with if I'm looking at it as we're doing it, starts off with the reveal of who the person in the shadows is, and it's no one other than Spider Woman, but not the Spider Woman that we all grew up with, Jessica Drew, in the black and white costume that we had never seen before, and it was actually quite exciting to see this character for the very first time. And she said that she was part of the suburb of Denver that was taken by the Beyonder, because he was taking little bits and pieces from various planets in the galaxy and patching together this battle world. And she was part of it, so she wants to help out. And so the heroes kind of take her in. She's very strong, and Spider-Man sees her and like, whoa. It's like she's at least as strong as I am, and I'm wondering if I can sue her for infringement. Calling her. So but the revelry was then broken up by the group of villains called the Wrecking Crew, who come through with this huge tank through the village where they're at, and they throw the body of the Wasp out onto the ground, and the villains realize that no matter what they do, she's dead. The village healer Zaji tried to bring her back and couldn't do it. So this is the first death that we've seen on the hero side, and it was actually quite jarring, to be quite honest with you. If you look back on it and you're 11, 12 years old and you see somebody getting shot through the chest on the pages here, and I didn't know who this person was back in 1985 when I started reading this. I read comics for the first time, but it's a woman. It's a woman being shot and killed, so I was like, well, this is kind of rough. So everybody wants revenge, and Captain America goes, no. And says, you guys, we can't do this. We're sitting under Galactus here, who's putting together his world-eating machine because he wants to devour this world, so he has enough energy to go against the Beyonder. That's his plan, and they need to be there to fight against them. So everybody's, on edge and pretty upset about that. And lo and behold, Captain America gets a telepathic thought from Professor X with the X-Men, and basically they're on their way to join the fray of sorts, and says, we will take care of Galactus if he attacks. You guys can go and do your revenge mission. So Galactus goes. So Captain America goes, everything's changed. Let's go after him, and they head on off real fast. Of course, I'm missing out that one person had already taken off. That was the She-Hulk. She was so upset that her best friend Janet Van Dyne was killed, the Wasp, that she ended up taking off on her own, no matter what Captain America said. A really fast aside, Galactus is getting ready, and of course he's got these big gigantic wrenches as he's fixing his machine, which he doesn't need because he can do everything by his mental capacity, of course, but he senses that there's something wrong, an anomaly on his solar system size spaceship. Okay, and what is it? It's Doctor Doom going around trying to find something to help him become, to just win this whole thing, and he basically grabs him telepathically and ejects him out into the atmosphere, and Galactus, and with the writing that Jim Shooter goes, he goes, Galactus seizes the anomaly and ejects it. He is not gentle, and in the background you just see Doom on fire, like so, and of course Doom survives, but he's basically all tattered and everything. We go into the second half of the issue, really, where the X-Men are now fighting against some of the villains, like the Wrecking Crew and no, not the Wrecking Crew. Excuse me, Doctor Octopus, Absorbing Man, and Titania, Volcana, the new people. Molecule Man has already been hurt, and they're fighting against each other. This is when the Absorbing Man gets his arm cut off by Wolverine, and later on, it's the first time that ever happened. Later on, he tries to put it back, and he was able to do it, but he didn't know if he was going to be able to, and they ended up trouncing them, of course. So and we go into the basically the fight at the end where the Wrecking Crew is beating up on the She-Hulk and totally wipe her out. I mean, like,
that's a hell of a battle.
Near death, exactly. So, and this is not the She-Hulk that we kind of like grew up with. This is not the She-Hulk from the Fantastic Four, who's like a little bit more glamorous and refined. This is really kind of like a little bit of a bestial She-Hulk. That's how she was kind of written and drawn back in the early 80s, late 70s, her first kind of appearances. So that's how she was, rough and tumble. And that's how that ended. And basically it led into the heroes attacking the villain's base, which leads us into issue 8. Now, James, hopefully you post one of these pictures when you put this online. But issue 8, is a classic cover. You have everything going on in the background, but you have the biggest character right in the front and center, and it's none other than Spider-Man, who of course is my all-time favorite character, as you know. But he's not the Spider-Man that we all know. He's actually in a black and white costume. It is the black and white costume, very, very first time, issue 8, Secret Wars. We won't get too much of a deep dive into it because we're going to do something different later, further along.
Before we get into the, I guess, the piece de resistance of Secret Wars, which is issue 8, which is probably the, aside from Secret Wars and the legacy of Secret Wars, you could say is the black costume. I don't know if that's, I don't want to like...
It's 100% true.
I think that's fair. Yes,
that's fair.
Because other things happened in it, but like the lasting legacy, like we were just talking before we went flying, is like we have the King in Black storyline that recently happened.
Right.
So clearly, the black costume is the legacy of Secret Wars. But was that Spider-Woman? Because I don't really know anything about Spider-Woman. So just to rewind a little bit, was that Spider-Woman? Did she have her own series at the time? Was she introduced in a separate comic book at the time?
She was introduced in this issue.
This is her first appearance.
And issue 7 was her first issue ever.
Oh, that's her first appearance in the
first
universe.
appearance ever. She was never seen before then, and she became a pretty big character. She became somebody. I mean, I forgot her name offhand, to be quite
Yeah, I
honest with
can't.
you.
I should have looked it up. I'm
But
sorry, I didn't do that either.
but she did become somebody. So it was cool. I enjoyed it because I remembered who the original Spider Woman was. I knew it was Jessica Drew. So this one not being that, of course, then they give her a perfectly 80s background of a divorced mother with single mother of a child, and trying her best. And then, yes, James, you did ask me if she became a West Coast Avenger. She did join the West Coast Avengers and probably a few other teams along the way.
Thank you. So, Chris, before we jump into issue 8, I'm just curious.
No, I mean,
what was your thought?
I
Any thoughts on
agree
issue 7?
100% that like the action starts to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
I think we see less of the less protracted indecision. Any indecision we see is briefer, which is nice. Because I think one of the things I was struggling with before was it felt like the questioning of, are we doing the right thing? Should we go? Should we stay? Was just a little protracted for dramatic effect, and it didn't make as much sense to me as some of these like momentary like, I want to go help her, but I want to go help She-Hulk, but we can't. We have to stand guard. And then it's like, no, here, I've got you covered. And then it's like, oh, okay, all right, well then let's go. Right. So changing circumstances and stuff, they make sense to me, and the pace of the book does pick up at this point. So to me, yeah, the pacing hits I think a better stride here. If anybody says that the pacing of the first 6 issues had to be the way they were in order to earn the back 9 here, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I could see the argument, right? So like I wouldn't argue against it.
They needed to fill 12 issues, so that's
Right.
probably why. I mean, could they have done it in 6 or
Yeah.
7? Sure. I
right,
agree.
and that's just it.
And today they would do it. Today they would take 60 issues to do it.
Yeah, and and that's why I say like I also, and this is just part of an extension of something I've tried really hard. Actually, a friend of the pod, Josh Bernhard, I've tried really hard to implement. Is there are times where I've used this phrase a lot of lazy writing, and Josh is like, I try not to use lazy writing because it's not necessarily a matter of laziness. And so, to me, there's part of me that's going like, they didn't need this much setup, but that's just my personal opinion. That's not necessarily, I think a lot of people feel like, no, this is good. It all builds to, the back 9, right? These last 6 issues. And so for some people that works. For me, the pacing was just a little too slow. So I was happy to see it start to ramp up. And then like Arco said, I mean, especially seeing that loss, seeing the first death on the hero side, it's like, okay, all right, things are getting real now. So it picks up for me, and I appreciate that.
I didn't mind the setup, Chris, because I think at this point, Shooter is EIC at this point, right, Arco? He's EIC? Okay. And he's been writing Marvel comics for a while before they wrote DC Comics. I think Shooter is trying to tap into Stan Lee and Roy Thomas and how they used to set things up, albeit not in this many issues in the story, but I think that's what he was trying to do. And I also think there's one thing about issue we haven't discussed yet, about issue 7, and I want to just show you a panel. Because Doom gets basically swatted away like a fly.
Hilarious.
Right?
I agree with Arco. Like
I
he
love
was
it.
not gentle sort of commentary is very, very funny because he's just screaming through space.
Yeah.
And here he is on the bottom of this page, coming back all
Smoking,
tattered and torn, and he's being harangued by the Enchantress. What are you going to do now, big man? What's your plans now, big man? I got to tell you, there's 2 characters I came to hate in the second half of this book, and she's one of them. The other one's Dr. Octopus.
I agree.
I mean, I can't say what I want to say about Dr. Octopus. We don't want to use that language here. But both of them just got under my skin, and I actually felt sorry for Doom here.
No, I mean, I'm with you. And also the other thing that I should like also say, and that I think we're all aware of, but like is always worth saying is, as a writer, you're not necessarily the one who determines how long an arc is, right? You should be, but you're not. So when you're talking about Shooter and what he's trying to do there, it's I know if you're told, hey, I need you to do this in 12 issues, and it's like, how do I stretch this out? You don't. And what choice do you have? And I know some people will make the argument that was like, they'll simplify it, right? Well, just don't take the job or argue or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you don't know what he argued to have in or out of the story. You don't know what hill he decided to die on. It was like, you know what, if we have a little more exposition, so be it. Or if he was just genuinely happy with the way that he wrote it, and I personally, it doesn't resonate with me, right? So I'm trying to be really more open to that notion of like, again, it's a collaborative effort. Arco, you've said previously, like, look, also this was meant to sell toys, and it did that. It raised interest amongst
Yeah, it
kids,
did that
right? So like,
spectacularly.
you know, how critical of it can we be? Well, personally, I can be as critical as I want of like these are things that didn't resonate for me. But the moment I start sort of like throwing down the gauntlet and saying you're wrong about this, you're wrong about that, this wasn't good, that wasn't, that's where for me, I have to draw the line here, because in the greater scheme of things, you know, I don't know everything that's happening behind the curtain. And like you said, Joe, like, you know, Shooter's, he's trying to do something. He's doing it with intention. This isn't meandering because he doesn't know what he's doing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and he is the editor-in-chief of the entire company, so who's going to tell him what, you know, except for the publisher, who's going to tell him he can't do that, right?
But that by itself, or it's not just the publisher, right? There's a toy deal here too. So if you're talking about like how much press we're going to give that, and again, I don't know what happens behind the scenes, but sometimes when an advertiser, you know, somebody who's pumping money into this says, I need you to jump, I may not say how high, but I might say, I can do 50, and they say 60, and I'm like, I'll make it work, right? So that's also a possibility.
Well, I think actually Shooter, Jim Shooter, which he actually made the deal, I think, for a year-long storyline. Like he made the deal.
Okay.
He made the deal with
Mattel.
Mattel at the time. For he's like, I will give you a year's storyline to get this toy line off the ground.
So that's the deal.
And so that's the deal. So he was like, he was doing 12 issues because he had to start.
That's what he promised.
Started May of the previous year and in April. So it was like, it's going 12, whether or not it's, you know.
We'll touch back on the business end of it and the genius, and as far as I'm concerned. So at the end here, going into issue 8 is where like the all-out chaos action really happens, and from beginning till end there is nothing but like amazement to me. You have the heroes attacking the villain's base. I'm going to give you the quick view here, but Joe, please just
yeah, I'm following along because you hit every one of my bullet points on issue 7.
Any nuance that I missed, please hit me up. So they attack, and they're looking for revenge. They want blood. Which is not what you normally see from the heroes, okay? But they have that. Plus, they're looking now for the She-Hulk, who's missing.
She-Hulk, exactly.
Okay, so they're doing that. They don't know that Doom is in tatters. Okay, they will, but that's not their goal to go up against Doom. They want to get their comrade back, and they want to beat the hell out of anybody they come, and they do it. Okay,
exactly
you have. The She-Hulk already softened up the Wrecking Crew a little bit, but lo and behold, who takes out, a part of the Wrecking Crew? I'm jumping around a little bit here, but you have Hawkeye goes up against a guy named Pile Driver who just likes to, headbutt people, okay? Because these are all, by the way, Asgardian magic enhanced construction workers. That's why they're called the Wrecking Crew. So, he takes out one of them with a bow and arrow, and he's like, bro, you better stop. He goes, at this range, a bow and arrow hurts a lot more than a bullet.
That's right.
He goes, yeah, okay, we'll see. And he goes, boom. He goes, oh my God, I've been shot. He takes him out. He goes, I told you. So that happens. You have something that I had never seen before at the time. You have the Human Torch going supernova and going against Ultron, because Ultron is now, everybody knows he's a super
enhanced
robot.
Doombot.
Yes, but at this point, he's an enhanced Doombot. He's Dr. Doom's personal bodyguard, and you have him going up against the Human Torch, and the Human Torch thinks that he could beat him with a little bit of flame, but lo and behold, he finds out he's adamantium, but apparently you can't melt it. Even in the core of a hottest star, apparently, because the Human Torch goes supernova, and even though Captain America is only 10 feet away, with his shield. But okay, 10-year-old me, okay, I'm in it. And he couldn't melt him, but there was something inside that wasn't adamantium that he overheated, and there goes him. And basically it's to get to the end here to see that the heroes end up beating the villains, decisively. Okay. But when Captain America is the last one standing up against Doom, he goes into Doom's quarters and finds Doom there. He's just like,
Chilling
he's
out.
like, what have I done with my life? He's like he ate bad pie or something, and he's like, he's harmless. I can't even do anything. Meanwhile, this is Doctor Doom of all people. He's not harmless, but yeah, okay, that's what he says. So he walks away, leaves him there, and everybody gets put into cells. At the end of this, massive fight that everybody that we see, everybody is just in tatters. They find She-Hulk. Reed Richards puts everybody into healing tubes, magically heals everybody, including the She-Hulk. A couple of things I found were amazing besides the Spider-Man reveal. You have what I find out for the first time, that Iron Man is not Tony Stark. I knew he wasn't Tony Stark, but I didn't know who Rhodey was at the time. So when he is fixing Rhodey's Iron Man's armor, you see that there's a black person underneath there. And Rhodey asks him, he goes, "Hey, I just want to know, were you surprised to see a black man in this armor?" And Reed Richards, being Reed and knowing him all these years later, definitely a Reed thing to say, he goes, "No, I didn't give it a second thought. I knew there was a man in there." That's the good thing about the Fantastic Four, and especially Reed Richards. He was always about the humanity, the straight and narrow. He didn't care about white, black, male, female, nothing, unless of course it's his wife, and he's like, no, you have to be barefoot and pregnant. So that's how he treated Sue. But otherwise, that to me was a great reveal. And then we get to the, like you said, the piece de resistance. At the end there, we have Spider-Man, who is his outfit, his classic red and blue, is ripped up in tatters, and he sees the Hulk and Thor coming out of a room, and he goes, "Oh my God, Thor, your cape and your outfit where did you find the tailor here on Battle World?" He goes, "Oh, there's a machine in there. All you got to do is think into it, and it'll create your a new costume for you." And it's like, all right. So he goes in there, and he's sitting down at this cosmic sewing machine, apparently, and he thinks into it, and all of a sudden, this big black orb just manifests itself right in front of him. And even though his spider sense is tingling, he touches it, and it starts spreading up his arm. And he's like, "Wait a second, what's going on? What's going on?" And all of a sudden, boom, the next page, this big splash page, and it is the first time we see the sleek and utterly cool, amazing black and white costume. Now, it's the first time that we see it in this series. However, because of the way that the series has been running, we had already seen it in issue 252 of Amazing Spider-Man, which happened a few months earlier. So, there was one of those weird things that happened. But now you have the reason behind the costume, because I don't believe they talked about it until after issue 8 came out. And then they said, "Yes, so I got it on this alien world," and whatever. So that was the end there. And if I'm not mistaken, then we start going into at the end of issue 8, Joe. What happens at the actual end of issue 8? Are they sitting around talking, or because I'm looking at issue 9 right now?
They go to Colossus goes to the village, right, to find the healer. What's her name? Zaji? Is that you pronounce it?
Zaji, yes. And she's like near death, right? And she comes stumbling out of the hut, and they. I apologize. Thank you, Joe. And go ahead. You can go ahead. Take it.
Well, they have the realization that that's how Janet survived. She used her powers to bring Janet back.
Yes.
And Reed, as you already mentioned, Reed is fixing Rhodey's Iron Man armor. Professor X and Magneto and the X-Men keep watch over Galactus, and Spidey gets his black costume. But Spidey gets that costume because he got into a pretty good knockdown drag out with Titania.
Yes, I'm sorry. I did not go
knocks
into
her out
that.
of the freaking building. I like that.
Yes.
And then the character who I alluded to just a few moments ago, who I can't stand, the Enchantress, she gets clocked by Cap. He just decks the crap out of her.
Yeah. And going back to Titania, Titania's, for those who know or don't know, was in the She-Hulk show, and the way that they portrayed her was, social media type of character with strength and everything. However, I noticed today that the way that she fought against the She-Hulk, she did this move where she was like a drop kick, and that's exactly what they did in the show when they were in the courtroom together. The exact same thing. I did not realize it at the time because I hadn't read the comic in such a long time. But so that was funny how they do that. And Skeeter McPherson, and that's her name, Titania, was a very scrawny woman who went to
That's
Doctor
right.
Doom in issue 3 with Titania, with Volcana, and asked for special powers, and for whatever reason, and he did. It made her very, like, practically invulnerable and strong, and she then did what every weak person with strength then does: become a bully.
Exactly.
But
Mhm.
Spider-Man totally humbled her
Yep.
because she couldn't keep up with his speed, and was basically like, basically doing what Spider-Man in Endgame, in Infinity War, was doing to Thanos, back and forth, going, slapping around, slapping around, slapping around. Of course, then he just grabs him, but she couldn't do that to him, and he ends up smacking her out of the wall into
Yeah.
like the next time zone. So that was very satisfying. Issue 9. It's all about Galactus, and Galactus. They have to take the fight to Galactus because they realize that they're all going to die at this point. He's just going to turn the entire planet and everything on it into energy so he can do what he normally does. Okay, and this time he needs it to go up against the Beyonder, because the Beyonder's even beyond Galactus, and that's unfathomable in itself. So the heroes are on their way there. The X-Men, though, realize that are underneath the village. They are right underneath him, so they start fighting him first. And what does Galactus do? But he pretty much sets out the insect repellent and
Mm.
little things to swat them away. Rogue.
Can I just say it's amazing that even with everything going on, Galactus still has to eat.
The man's got to
This
eat.
is the only planet they have, and the man is like, you know what? I'm hungry.
I'm hungry.
Well, look at the size of the house he lives in. Just think about all the energy you expend cleaning that place, right? So,
Right.
come on.
Well, he won't have that much longer.
Right. Arco, I have a question for you. You just mentioned Rogue. This Rogue has superpowers, right?
Oh yeah, she has the same superpowers that we've always known her to
Right.
have.
Is this the Rogue that stole those powers from Carol Danvers?
Yes, it is. Yes, it
Thank
is.
you. Okay.
From Avengers Annual number 10.
Yep.
I believe it was 1981. It came out,
Great
and
annual.
it was a great annual, really good annual. And so same Rogue, and she was a villain. A few more appearances through the next few years, and then she started to not be able to handle her powers, and that's when she joined the X-Men. Okay, so now the X-Men are going up against Galactus and his his little robots and everything, and the Avengers and the other heroes are on the way over there. And one thing that we haven't talked about is that the Thing, Ben Grimm, part of the Fantastic Four,
Change back
is
to him.
having an existential crisis on this planet for some reason or other. When he is in the middle of a fight, when he needs to be the Thing, things happen to him, like he turns back into a human being, which is useless when you're fighting against Dr. Octopus or anybody else. And it happened a few times, and he had no idea why it was happening. So there were some theories about it at the time, but that was that. And they're on the way over there, and everybody's like really antsy. Everybody's starting to like doubt themselves. You got Rhodey talking to himself and saying, nobody's gonna, I'm gonna show them, and they're keeping an eye on the Spider-Woman because she's new, and they're keeping an eye on Captain America's Spider-Man's costume, which, by the way, is good for the summer. He shows off that, just thinking about it, he's got short sleeves and shorts, so that's cool too. That was pretty cool. And they finally get to the battle, and they're joining the X-Men, and it's not going well. And Reed Richards, in the middle of it, if I'm not mistaken, yes, in the middle of it, Galactus disappears and takes Reed Richards with him. and he's sitting on his throne because Galactus needs a throne. Apparently, he's sitting there. The only thing missing from this Galactus is a G on his chest because
Yeah.
when I was reading it as a kid, I didn't care. It all worked. But when you look at it later on in life, you like Chris was saying, and Chris didn't read this when you were younger, and I mean, you guys didn't either, obviously. But me being the only person who actually read it for because it was intended for me, Arco Esposito, it worked. But I totally get what you guys are saying. There is a simplistic story here. We said there is, a rush maybe to get through it, or a bog down. To me, some of the cheesier elements of this is like this. He doesn't need a throne. He's Galactus, okay? So he always thought of Reed Richards sort of like a friend. In fact, he did call him a friend back in issue 244 of the Fantastic Four when Reed Richards saved his life. And he said, maybe Galactus has finally found those he can call friends.
Friend.
And he basically respects him enough to talk to him because he doesn't have to talk to anybody. Everybody's a gnat underneath him. And he goes, listen, would you like to see your wife? Look, there she is. She hasn't given birth yet. Okay. He goes, all right, now listen to what I have to tell you because it's really important. I'm going to kill you all. This basically, he says this off screen, but this is what he says. Okay. And then after he does that, he sends them back down there and he starts working on the machine again. And they're all fighting up against him, and they ended up wrecking the machine, which is great. They did what they wanted to do. They saved themselves for an extra 30 seconds apparently because he just decides to take off, and Reed was like, no, you have to stop him directly. Forget the machine. And he takes off. He's like, we're all dead now. And he was like, what are you talking about? Well, right now Galactus, I don't know how Reed knows exactly what he's doing. Right about now Galactus is up in his house, in his solar system size house, and he's taking a look around, his last look. Because now he's going to eat his entire space station of a home, and he's going to use that energy to do it. And
I love it. It's just business, baby. It's just business, baby. I love the way Galactus does that because really and truly, it's like I respect you enough to tell you this thing, and also I'm gonna do the thing. And then even as they're like gonna destroy the machine, he's like, oh no, I'm not gonna hurt you. I could just squash you all, but like it's just business. What Thanos says in the movies about how it's not personal, but then he says he takes it back, like the past version of himself says, I will enjoy this.
I'm going to enjoy it.
Is like, no, there's no enjoyment here. I'm just hungry, and business is business, baby.
I'm doing my thing. Yeah, exactly. 100%, Chris. And you know what? That part of Galactus has always remained the same. We did the episode on Galactus recently where he said he was written, Stan Lee said, he's not doing it because I'm not doing this because I want to. He's not inherently evil. He does it because he has to, just like we all have to eat. We don't think about the cows that we eat when we're eating a hamburger. Okay. And then he does not thinking about the people that he kills when he's destroying a planet. So of course, just as he's about to pull that off, we see that Dr. Doom is in his cell, and he says, oh my God, the homeworld is the key, because now everybody knows. Apparently everybody got smart at the same exact time. And he goes, that's it. That's the key. So of course he busts out and he goes after Claw, Ulysses Claw, who is made of sound. And he starts cutting him up, dicing him up, and Claw is insane anyway. He's like, sure, go ahead, whatever.
Slices and dices and makes julienne fries.
And he uses him to basically fashion lenses. And what are the lenses for? Well, he posits that the energies that Galactus is creating, he can steal them and put them all into his armor. And by doing so, we'll get basically the power of Galactus, which may be enough to then go up against the Beyonder.
Well, this is like great, Arco, because I like the fact that like Doom is basically, they didn't say it, but he's like, I had a plan once. I stole the power cosmic from the Silver Surfer. That's a great plan. I'm gonna
upgrade.
Exactly.
I'm gonna do it again.
Exactly. And of course, James and I had forgot that. And so yes, of course, we've already seen this particular arc once before. And it worked for a certain amount of time, and then it ended up failing. And well, not to give it away, but this part of the plan does not fail. he actually succeeds. In the next issue, he actually steals the energy from Galactus, just as Galactus is about to feed. He steals it from him, and all this energy, the energy of 1,000 suns, is all of a sudden goes into his breastplate, and he does that, and he's able to withstand that, and he basically becomes the Beyonder Light, or maybe the Infinity Gauntlet Light. Here, he is able to perceive everything around him. He's able to read minds. He's got power cosmic, basically, that he's just trying to now. He's trying to figure out how to use it. This is issue 10, where he pulls everything into him, and am I correct here, Joe? Issue 10, he pulls everything into him. He steals the power.
He turns Monica Rambeau into hologram.
The cover of issue 10 to me was like the best. Okay, because
I think that's the best cover in the entire series.
100%. He is all battered. So issue 10 is where he now has the power of Galactus. Okay, and he needs it to fight up against the Beyonder, and he goes. Basically, he changes his his Doom garb that we all know into his Secret Wars Doom garb that we found in the packages that we were buying as kids.
He's now a toy.
He's now a toy. He is basically
product placement.
Oh my God!
There you go.
No better product placement. The only thing it didn't say was Mattel on there. Okay, yeah. Made in China. I mean, it was great. It was great. So he goes up. All this energy is around. It's like is swirling about all the heroes, and they feel like they're going to die. It's at any moment now they're going to die, but then all of a sudden they get sucked into Doom's castle or wherever it is, and they realize that Doom did something just there. You have the X-Men, you have Magneto, you have the Avengers and everybody, and Magneto's trying to keep everything together, and people are talking about Magneto being a villain and everything, and the X-Men are standing up for him, and this is where a very interesting thing happened, and it was the first time that we saw an interaction between Captain America and Wolverine. So you have
heated discussion.
Heated discussion, absolutely. So you have Wolverine actually sticking up for Magneto, not because he's part of the team, but because he's a mutant. And they were saying where that he was a terrorist, and he was a murderer, and he was at this point, because we know that he killed the Soviets on that submarine.
That's right.
in the issue 150s, and even if it was just a self-defense. And Wolverine says, and Captain America goes, no, there is no justification for terrorism. And what was the other word? I forgot the other word. Terrorism and
Sorry, I wrote that down.
Yeah, I forgot it too. I apologize. But terrorism, and then Wolverine goes, terrorists. That's what the little army calls
I love that line so much. Or that's what the big army. That's what the big army calls the little army, is what he says.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. The
so
big army
good.
calls the little army, and then the last thing he goes, I used to have some respect for you. Okay, so, and you know what? If you didn't know Wolverine at the time, you knew that he was later in life, in the 80s and the 90s, he was a very honorable person. So for him to say that he respected you was actually something. And then we'll learn later on that they actually worked together back in the 1940s, but they must have forgotten at that point. So on Battle World, because there was a lot going on. So Doom has got the power now, and he changes his armor into this the Mattel armor, and he realizes that the Beyond are still out there, and he needs to do something about that. He needs to go get that power, because Doom can't be second; he needs to be first in everything. So he does this, and he goes out into the void, and he fights him. And I swear, this splash page that I'm looking at right now looks like Sonic the Hedgehog when they're going for the rings inside the tunnel over there, where these circles are coming out. The Beyonder has no form, so all Doom is fighting is energy, I guess. And the Beyonder says, "Stop! You cannot approach." And Doom's like, "Yeah, whatever." And of course, Doom is losing big time. He loses an arm. He loses a leg. Again, this is jarring for an 11-year-old kid. I don't care how colorful it is. And he reaches out telepathically to the heroes and he says, I'm this close to winning. All I need is your help. Give me your essence, your souls, your lives, just to add to me. And I'm sure I could turn this, whatever. I can show we can win. We'll split the spoils, even though they don't know that he's only got half of a leg left. And and everybody was like, no, except the one person who thought about it for a split second was Magneto. And they tackled him for whatever reason. I guess actually he started walking towards it, and then he looked over his shoulder, so he kind of hesitated.
Yeah, he
Then
makes
him.
eye contact with Xavier, is what they say, and he stops, and then they tackle him.
Yes. Yeah, they tackle him, and
Rhodey, Clint Barton, and the Wasp tackle him.
Right, and they were like, oh, he was going to join them. He's going to join him, and then Captain America goes, it looked to me like he stopped, and he was. As far as I'm concerned, he did nothing wrong. And of course, that was the reconciliation moment between Captain America and Wolverine, which is, within 2 pages, everything is okay, which is Marvel.
Yeah, but see, if I can interrupt, Arco, it shows that Captain America judges an individual by their actions. He doesn't judge them by their stereotypes or their.
No.
He doesn't judge.
I disagree with you, Joe. I think mostly Cap does that. But I do think that Cap is guilty, at least partially, of what Wolverine accuses him of.
I'll agree with that. But Cap then, when he sees somebody either change or morph, he understands that, okay, this guy is a human being.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to recognize that. And he's Captain America, he's like Superman. He's for everyone.
Yeah.
So I think this shows, we'll get to this at the end, but I think the best written character in this entire story, there's two. Obviously, Doom is the best written character.
Mm-hmm.
This story is really about Doom, but I think Shooter really nails Captain America in this story.
Yeah, okay, I'll agree. And again, it was the mid '80s where the mutant menace was, and the fear of mutants was at its height. Okay, so it permeated all the books, even at the Avengers level, where they still had to deal with whatever mutants, and you could be white, black, or purple. If you were a mutant, you were, you were something.
Cap has preconceived notions, but he's not intractable.
Right,
he can be swayed,
and that's what I think, because I agree. Like, because I also think it did a really good job of sort of, because if I can believe this about Cap, that Cap really, he's not convinced that this is necessarily a problem, that he really does have some sort of bias against mutants. It actually does explain why when some of these earth-shattering things happen in the X-Men, the Avengers don't show up, right? Like
never show up.
That's because they're out of town. The Fantastic Four don't show up. The Defenders don't show up.
No, I mean, but I think in world, and I know sometimes you just have your own book, and it's like, we're not doing the crossover. I get it. I know this, but I think that practically there's also an explanation, because we see this happen in future books too, where like when Cap and Cyclops have their little showdown in I can't remember which book it is, but it's more recent, where Cyclops is like, don't act like you give a damn. You come in and you get involved now. No, we take care of our own. Back off, right? So I like that aspect of Cap. Doesn't really, he's like, no, all people are people to me, and Wolverine's like, that's not true. Wolverine calls him out, and then you're right. Cap is not intractable. He does see what Magneto does, and it's not like he opens it to question, which Cap does a lot in this book. Cap does a lot of those, like, I don't know, am I right about this? I'm not really sure. But he doesn't question when it comes to Magneto. He says, it looked to me like this is what he was doing. That's an innocent man.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Captain America in this book, more than anybody else, does go through existential crisis, because he is actually not the leader of the Avengers at this time. But they basically say, okay, Wasp or Captain America here. And I mean, you're always going to go with the soldier over the politician. And, basically the Wasp at that point was more interested in her hair.
Hairdo,
I mean,
it's so
silly. Being a chairman later on in life, but at that time she wasn't.
There's another, if I could, I'm sorry. There's another character, and I think it was in issue 8, that also has a, I wouldn't call it an existential crisis, but when Doom's preparing to steal the power from Galactus, Reed says, "Wait a minute, maybe we should let him do that, because then the Beyonder will kill Doom and not Doom, Galactus, and then the problem of Galactus eating civilizations will be over. It's like pick the lesser of two evils. They can get rid of one of them. So but then you say he shows him his wife on Earth, pregnant, and then Reed comes back and says, "No, I want to fight now because I want to fight for my child. I want to see my child born."
Yeah.
So we have these very iconic characters, Reed Richards and Steve Rogers, set in their ways, yes, but at the same time seeing things differently as this battle commences, and you see them react and change, and it's very human.
Almost as if they're sprinkling mature themes into a child's book.
Exactly.
Okay? Which is, the little bit that they put out there that we can, appreciate later in life, that, hey, that was there in the middle of the high school writing. If that's how I've heard it written, how I've heard people refer to it. Not me. I mean, I can see it.
Who's referred to this as high school writing?
Yeah, but I online, there's plenty of Reddits on there. So getting back to issue 10 here, one of the gorier part of this is now Doom. Once again, Doom is in pieces on Battle World. His battle with the Beyonder went very badly, and he is, of course, not dead. He's just this close to death, right? And the Beyonder,
schematic
goes
of
down
Doom.
there. Yeah, exactly. Goes down and basically dissects him, vivisects him, which means that you're dissecting somebody who is still alive. And piece by piece, layer by layer, and Jim Shooter writing this, layer by layer is peeled away, and you actually see it from the back in the shadows, that you have everything. One side you have the armor, and the other side you have tissue, bone, and whatever. And there's Doom, like ready to die, hoping to die, but he sees that his breastplate, which apparently is the one thing that he needs to finish this, is right above him, and he goes to reach for it, and that's the last you see of it, until all of a sudden, you go back to the heroes. Everything is rumbling again. The earthquake, I forgot to tell you, but Battle World is starting to fall apart because this is the biggest one. The biggest earthquake is about to, they threaten to destroy everything, and they go outside, and it actually isn't an earthquake. It was Doom all of a sudden pops up. He's victorious, and not only is he victorious, but he's as tall as Galactus. And these guys are like, oh my God, we just barely won right now, and now we got to fight this guy again. But then they're like, all right, everybody, Captain America, all right, get ready. And Doom goes, no, fight's over, we've won. The Beyonder's no more, and he shrinks down. And what does he do? He takes off his mask, which you don't see right away until the next episode, the next issue 11. You have Doom facing everybody. You see Doom's back, and all the heroes are looking at him on the cover, and it says "The Face of Doom." Is that correct? Issue 11 on the cover, Joe? Does that say "The Face of Doom"?
The Face of Doom. Yep.
Yeah, okay, very good. So issue 11.
Could I interrupt one more time, please? Because something that happened earlier in the issue between Cap, Wolverine, and Magneto. They go, Cap will not leave those imprisoned villains to be destroyed because Cap cares about everybody. So he runs down there, and who runs down there also? Wolverine, and they get them out. And Wolverine says, "Don't take this the wrong way, but you're a better man than I gave you credit for. I'm an attacker, and you're a defender, but we're both soldiers." And I think that's once again, these are characters who have preconceived notions of each other, but in the heat of battle, when you have to pull together, that stuff's got to go out the window. And you also evolve at the same time. Cap would never.
Sorry, finish what you're saying, Joe. Sorry.
I was going to say, Cap would never let innocents die on his watch. Villain or hero, he would never let them die on his watch.
And I think it leads to, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't that also lead to, again, what I think is one of the better lines in the book, is Cap's response is just, some of my best friends are people.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yes. I forgot that. Yes.
I love, right? Because we still literal decades later,
it's in the same
still have people saying things like, some of my best friends are black, some of my best friends are gay. And it's like, you don't understand how problematic that statement is.
Yes.
But when we look back at some books, it's like, or, some media, whatever, it's like, well, product of its time. But that's not what Cap says. Cap uses, I think, a great line to say, some of my best friends are people.
Yes.
And that acknowledgement, I think, like, shows that he genuinely does believe that, and wasn't necessarily aware of the bias that he was carrying until Wolverine pointed it out. I love that line. Some of my best friends are people.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Issue 11, the very first page we have is a handsome AF Doctor Doom. Okay, the first time you see his face without the scars and everything, because we all know that. Look
it's
at
like Peter Parker's older brother.
Are you kidding me? Oh, it's beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful. The man's got hair and everything. I mean,
he looks like Norman Osborn.
Yeah, actually, no, you're right. He's good. Yeah, he's the cornrows.
He's talking to the heroes, basically telling them, calm down, that's it. You don't have to worry about anything anymore. We've won. We're done. And the villains who would just helped escape are looking on, and they're like, what's he doing? He's like, we're the villains. Why is he talking to them? And Molecule Man, who, he looked up to Doom the entire time, he's like, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to, and he does his own Molecule Man thing. And, he goes to fight him, and Doom's like, yeah, man, I think you could probably do it if you knew what you were doing. And here, let me open up your mind here. And he touches him on the head, and he basically takes away the block that the Molecule Man put on himself, and he didn't even realize it, to hold back his power. Okay, so which is something that comes on later in the Fantastic Four books. But it turns out the Molecule Man, in the next Secret Wars that happens 20 years later, as a matter of fact, the Molecule Man ends up being probably top 5 most powerful people in the entire Marvel Universe. And it happened specifically at this moment when Dr. Doom did this. And so after that, the Molecule Man takes himself and his people, and he goes, all right, now I can get us home. So he takes the Denver suburb, lifts it up in the air, and off they go, millions of miles away. See how long it takes for them to get there. And in the meantime, the Doom goes, all right, guys, to the heroes, you guys, why don't you go home and come back tomorrow? I'll come back. We'll have some tea in the morning and we'll talk. And we'll see what we can do about all this. So they leave. What are they going to do? They leave to kind of just regroup, clean up a little bit, shave. I'm sure you have a picture of Reed Richards shaving someplace. That's what he does, as we know, when things get rough. You have some stinging gnat of energy going around the heroes from hero to hero to hero. And you don't know what it is, but like they're possessed. They don't act like themselves. They're just like either rude or not talking, or just, in the case of the Hulk, being hulky. And you see that happening. And finally it ends up being with Spider-Woman, who then tries to get near Dr. Doom. And is he near Dr. Doom? No, actually, it's not near Dr. Doom. It wasn't. She just basically just kind of wakes up, and there is a message written on the wall. It says, Doom, what's it say? You are summoned to the Tower of Doom at dusk tomorrow. There you go. She gets close to Claw. And then they're like, what tower? And he's like, oh, I guess it's that one. And the thing looks outside, and a 2-mile obelisk of rock is all of a sudden lifted into the air, and that's the Tower of Doom. Okay, so that's where it is. And of course, he takes Claw also, and brings Claw back to life, basically puts his body back together, because that's what he can do. And he tells Claw, don't let me sleep. All right, and he just, let me rest, but don't let me sleep. So the next morning they go see Dr. Doom at the tower, and he's like, all right, so I got to convince you guys that I'm not the same Dr. Doom as always. So whatever it is you want, I'll give you. He tries to prove it to them by bringing Captain Marvel, the female Monica Rambeau, back to life. She was a hologram, stuck as a hologram for a couple of issues. Brings her back, and then also brings back Kang. Who Ultron killed in issue 3, and Kang basically is saying the same thing that he was finishing the sentence.
He has to finish the sentence.
He's like, wait, Doom, you need me. He's like, where am I? And I didn't know who Kang was, all I just saw, especially since this was the very first issue I ever bought, don't forget, Secret Wars number 11. I had no idea who these people were. He brings somebody back and gets rid of them all within one panel. Okay, and I'm like, I don't know what just happened, but it's cool. So the heroes basically say, Doom, thank you, good luck to you, but we are not going to take you up on your offer. We're good, and they leave. So that was it. And Doom's like, all right, that's what you want to do. That's fine. So he's resting about a little bit, and they realize that they forgot one of their own. A Spider-Woman is missing. They go to find her, and Captain America goes back to find her, stumbles in on Doom and Claw, and Doom starts telling him a story about his mother, I believe, and all that. And Captain America leaves, not feeling too much better, and we see at the end a couple of pages of this. They're all sitting around the table. There's like 21, 22 people, the heroes all
22.
together. 22. Okay, 22 heroes.
They make a point of saying it in the next issue.
Exactly. So 22 heroes all together, and they have to be unanimous in what they want to do, whether they want to attack him, which I found to be weird, or just leave it alone. And they all agreed 100% that they need to attack him. And I never understood that. I'm like, that's basically a suicide run, okay? Because what you're doing is, and he's saying, you guys leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. But I guess they knew him at the time. I didn't understand it, but I guess they knew him well enough that
they knew his track record.
he would never really leave them alone. And he's got all the power in the universe right now, and it won't be enough until he subjugates everybody beneath him. Because what is power if you are not the all powerful? And if you don't have slaves, you're not all powerful. And I guess that's what they were. So as they all agreed, and Colossus was the very last person to agree, crying. They were all struck by a bolt from the blue, because that's what Captain America said. We could be struck by a bolt from the blue at any moment. And as Colossus said yes, that's what happened. And they were all killed right there. Right on in that.
There it is.
So, yeah, and there you go. Just like that. Next issue. We're in an hour here, so I'm going to go through this pretty fast. Next issue, I am blown away because I see body parts everywhere. I swear to God, there's a head here, there's an arm there. You don't even know.
Cracked shields there.
Okay. Zaji, the healer, sees what happened, goes to the site, tries to find her love, Colossus, and who, of course, turned into his armored form just right before the bolt came. So his body was less destroyed than everybody else's. So she brought him back first. And by doing that, she ended up dying. Okay, that was basically her. Brought her back, and she ended up dying. And he put his grief to the side and ended up finding Reed Richards, because Colossus knew somehow, some way, that his plastic body will also be less mangled up, and he needed the brains of the outfit. So he brought him back and put him in the healing tube that he doesn't, I guess, is very intuitive, alien technology. And the guy could barely speak English. He can speak alien now. So he puts him in there, and Reed Richards come back. And then, of course, Reed Richards makes 21 other tubes and puts everybody in there. And, okay, we find out that Claw is telling Dr. Doom this story and telling him, he's like, well, maybe this could happen. And Doom's like, all right, well, go ahead. Tell me how they could be alive. Tell me. And he goes, well, this is exactly what he shows them exactly what could have happened. And Doom goes, damn it, Claw. And this I never understood if this really happened or Doom did it himself by willing it to happen, because we know that some villains are not meant to be powerful in their own minds, a la Thanos. So he says this is what happened. Colossus came back, Mr. Fantastic, and then Mr. Fantastic brought everybody back. He goes, damn it, now that you told me the story, I may make it come true. And of course, what's the very next thing that happens? The hammer of Thor comes through the tower, and he goes, they're alive, and and he goes and he sends and he's now just barely holding on to this energy of the Beyonder in him, because he's a mortal person. He can't hold all this energy out. It's starting to come out, and it threatens the very existence of reality, and he's trying to keep himself in check, but he's got to fight these guys. So Claw goes, why don't you give me a little bit of your power? And he goes, all right, yeah, here you go. Here you go. So Claw goes out, goes to fight people. I've been wanting to get to this point since we started talking about this, okay?
Good.
Joe, you have the issue, okay? So you're going to have to show them. But Claw goes out and he creates these sound monsters. And there is a 2-page spread, okay? 2-page spread of everybody fighting, and which is great, okay? 2-page spread, that is awesome. If you flip the page, Joe, you will see something that
The next page?
I thought, yeah, next page you'll see a couple of panels. Okay, just everything's going well, everybody's fighting, and it looks great. But there are a couple of panels where Mike Zeck is not the artist.
No, I when I was reading that yesterday, I thought the same thing. Is it John Byrne?
Okay,
No, it's
that
not.
makes so
It's
much.
not.
I was
Well,
curious.
hold on. So me and James talked about, and I don't know, James, if you remember this, but years and years ago, I swear I looked at the She-Hulk, how she was drawn, and I said, that's McFarlane. I said, that is McFarlane. The cape. I said, that's McFarlane. And then there was another page where it's the Thing fighting some monster, and he changes back into his human form, and then he stops himself, and he turns back into the Thing. So now he's able to go back and forth, and he starts crying, and he's talking to the She-Hulk, and those 2 pages, those 2 panels are not drawn by Mike Zeck. And
No.
I know this is not part of the story.
Neither is this page, right?
It's not. Well, that on the left, it's not. It's not McFarlane. It's Art Adams. Okay?
Oh my God, you're right, Arco.
Yes,
That is Art Adams.
It's Art Adams.
Yep.
And
Wow.
it took me a long time. And you guys may not know who Art Adams was.
I know
He did
who he is.
He did a lot of mutant books in the 80s.
Very detailed works,
yes,
especially when
very good. So for like 20 years, I thought it was McFarlane, and I thought I found like a little Easter egg.
Byrne at first.
Yeah, so that was great.
That's cool.
The
Wild.
heroes end up winning, beating all of Claw's minions, and Dr. Doom is losing his mind. Okay, he's this close to losing it all, and the heroes are about to go up against him, but lo and behold, they don't have to, because Claw goes back inside, goes to talk to Doom, and now he is close enough for what we know now. That little spark of energy that had been going from person to person to person was actually what was left of the Beyonder. The Beyonder comes out and rips all of Doom's power out and takes it all back from him, and turns Doom back into his classic costume, and Claw's like, oh my God, Doom, I'm so sorry, he's like he is banished by the Beyonder, and Claw goes with him, and boom, the war is over. The heroes have won. All that's left is to get off of the rock, the battle world, how to get home. And Reed Richards has figured out a way to do that, but in the 3 or 4 pages until the end, something weird is happening. Little things start happening, like when people say, well, I sure wish I had a cream soda. All of a sudden a cream soda appears. Or what else? I think Nightcrawler said that I really wish we could find Lockheed. We haven't seen him since issue 1. All of a sudden Lockheed shows up with a dragon girlfriend. Okay, so they start thinking that remember what the Beyonder said, beat your enemies and all your dreams shall come true. Whatever you wish will come true. So they're like, well, I guess this is the extra energies from the Beyonder, giving us our deepest desires. And Wolverine says, Fallout. I guess it's like Fallout. I guess it's true. You got the nuclear energy coming down, and it's allowing them to do these things. And one of the coolest things that happens next is no words are spoken, and it just goes to show you how important this thing is to Captain America. He takes his shield, which has been broken, and he's got whatever pieces he has in front of him. That bolt from the blue was enough to destroy the shield. And he goes, there lies in front of him pieces of like been a friend for however many years, and he's sitting over there, and you could tell he's wishing, and all of a sudden the next panel, boom, sparkly clean, it's shining, and it's brand new, it's whole, and you know what? That's great. That's just the best part of that entire wish fulfillment thing is that he gets his shield back, and which is good because there's product placement, and you need it for the toys. So they all get sent to various places where Thor goes to Asgard, Fantastic Four goes to New York City, and the Avengers go wherever they're going to go. But they leave Ben Grimm behind because he feels that this is where he can be himself finally for the first time. He can turn back and forth from the Thing to human, and he does not want to leave. Reed Richards realizes that the reason he's able to do that is because of the Beyonder's powers, but he doesn't want to tell Ben that. So he leaves him there as he is, leaves him with basically a little walkie-talkie thing. So if you ever want to come home, just press the button.
Press the button.
And that's it. And you leave Ben Grimm just thinking to himself in a leotard on a rock someplace. And that was the end of Secret Wars. And little side note, Ben Grimm stays on there for about 10 issues. And he has his own little adventures on Battleworld before it ends up like destroying itself, and he ends up having to come home. She-Hulk ended up taking his place on the team through like the 270s into the 280s before he comes back. And by that time, Johnny Storm had taken his girlfriend away. So welcome back. So that was a very quick rundown through Secret Wars.
But a very in-depth rundown.
I'm sorry if I missed some things. I'm sorry if I talked too much.
No,
really
that was good, Arco. Thank you for that rundown, and Joe for filling in some of the holes.
Did you mention the fact that when they're fixing their costumes, Peter notices they're not using the same machine he did?
No, I didn't.
Because that kind of portends what's coming.
Yes, exactly.
With the costume,
he did say, hey, did you guys use that machine? He goes, no, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Goes, oh, that's weird. Then we didn't hear it. And I guess
Parker luck strikes again.
I guess if you didn't really think about it at the time, you wouldn't think that it meant anything. Of course, we would know that about 5 or 6 issues into Amazing Spider-Man. But we did talk about the fallout from the Beyonder's wish powers, and Captain America fixing his shields, which I thought was fantastic, as you saw. Everybody knows that I love this series. I love what it was. I understand later in life what it was meant to do, sell books, sell toys, and it was aimed for 11-year-old me, okay? Later on in life, I can say that, yes, the story is very simplistic, but knowing what it was aimed for, it absolutely hit every single point. This is the first time I saw Mike Zeck in action, and he is what I would call minimalist, but really just an in-depth minimalist. He did action so well. He did musculature so well. Everybody was drawn amazingly in this, and I thought his drawing lent to the overall story every single issue. And if it wasn't for him, I'm not sure. I'm sure there would have been other people that could have done it. John Byrne could have done this. I would say probably John Byrne would probably have been the only other person now looking back that I think would have done this series justice like Mike Zeck did. I don't know why Art Adams was in. I guess, my man was out for a cup of coffee for those 2 panels and said, hey, Art, draw this real fast. That's about it. And, Jim Shooter, say what you want, but, he saved Marvel more than once in the decade that he was editor-in-chief. James, I know you've spoken to him. He likes to talk about things. I know you said that.
He does like to talk. The man likes to talk about things.
And he deserves it because he saved Marvel. And if it wasn't for him, not only we would not have this, but I doubt we would have had anything else as much as we enjoyed the last 25, 30 years if it was not for what he did. So hats off to Jim Shooter. Thank you for giving us Marvel Superhero Secret Wars. For what it's worth, you single-handedly reeled this guy in, probably with millions of other
mission accomplished.
Also. And mission accomplished. And you got my money,
Oh, and hey, listen, I gotta give credit where it's due, because I think back to an episode we had recorded with Jeremy Adams a while ago where he talks about putting the toys back in the toy box.
Mhm.
You know, and I've got to tell you that, like, for as many big things as happen in this story, there are a couple of different ways it could have gone, right? It could have been earth-shattering stuff, and it's like, I hate the way the direction this character's going in. Kind of like what they do with, what they did with Wally for a little bit, right? And it's like, great, this makes me unhappy. They could have also just chosen to undo everything, and it's like, cool. So it was, this was all a dream, right? But that's not what Jim Shooter does here, right? He does put all the toys back in the box, but he leaves a couple of things out. But do with that what you want to do, right? Like, Spidey's suit could have been totally innocuous, and instead we get Venom. But it didn't have to be Venom. It could have just been something simple, the conversation that we see playing out between Wolverine and Cap. It's like, okay, you could resolve it there, or you can do something with it in the future.
And
You
they did.
talk about Ben Grimm staying away for a while, and then he comes home. It's there's nothing that Jim Shooter does in this that can't be like, okay, this is just a bump in the road, and your favorite characters are still here. But he also left enough odds and ends that it's like, we can go in a lot of different directions here. So I have a lot of respect for, even though, again, like you said, Arco, this worked for you, it still works for you. And you said, no, I can see how, at this age, I'm looking back and going, sure, some simplistic stuff. But at the end of the day, it accomplished what it was meant to accomplish. And that's why, from my perspective, I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with the story. I don't love it or anything. It gets better towards the back nine of it. But also, not selling it to me in the first place. Put all the toys away and still leave enough that, like, other writers have a lot to work with. So really, really impressed with striking a balance there.
Chris, thank you very much for bringing that point. I hadn't even thought about it, but since you bring up that point, I will tell you that characters like Doctor Doom was dead before this was basically. He was really dead before this series started. So they found a way to bring him back and then put him back into the Marvel Universe. So going forward, you now have Doctor Doom. You have the changes in the Fantastic Four. You have the She-Hulk now part of the Fantastic Four, and that was a very great run that John Byrne did for the next however many years that she was in on it before Ben Grimm came back. You had the changes in the Avengers that happened. You had the dynamic between Wolverine and Captain America, which then spilled over into an issue that Mike Zeck did the artwork for, and the incredible cover where you have Wolverine slashing the shield and the sparks coming off when they're fighting. So there are quite a few things, and of course you have the black costume, which so many different storylines came from this. It was not a one-off like their other limited series were. And have been since. It could have been a dream, like you said. I didn't even think about that, but it was a good base to start off and spread out in a lot of different ways. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and again, I love it because they did exercise some thought around that. But also, you didn't have to. I like that Jim Shooter didn't paint any of the characters into a corner.
Yeah.
Ben Grimm stuck around, but he didn't have to stick around for 10 issues. It could have been one, and he learned something about himself. No big deal. Spider-Man's suit, it could have been totally innocuous or a 1 or a 2 off. I love the setup of, like, I'm going to give you all these story seeds. Take it as far or not as far as you want. And, like, that's masterful.
That's the best way of
again,
putting
getting back to
seeds.
He's the EIC, right? So he's the editor in chief. He writes this epic storyline, and he's giving his charges, his people that work for him. Okay, guys, if you want to go in this direction, Then actually, it might have been more than that. There may have been some dictates that hey, you guys, you got to follow up on this stuff that I laid down here.
Well, I think his quote was always, Jim Shooter was like, when people go to war, they come back different. So he wasn't.
Yeah, well,
he didn't want He didn't want it to be like an imaginary tale or an Elseworld.
No, that's DC at the time,
or something that happened and nobody ever talks about again. He wanted somebody to come back from war and be changed. When I got to see Jim Shooter recently at a con a couple weeks ago, I said to her, "We're doing this episode." I said, "I'd love to." I said to him, because it dawned on me then, which I guess it didn't dawn on me in the previous episode, that Spider-Man changing his costume was probably the first big costume change of any superhero that actually took and was significant. Like it's the first time someone changed their costume, and he was
Yeah,
like,
it was on television, like you said, James. It was like reported. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
he was like, I did that on purpose to get press. He said the people in the Marvel whatever marketing department said no one's going to care, Jim. And he said that when that issue hit the stands, he's
Uh-huh.
like every news station
Uh-huh.
called Marvel to get a
Uh-huh.
quote to ask about it. He's like I knew it did its job.
Uh-huh.
And then I also asked him, I said, how did you design it? He said, I just told Mike Zeck I wanted a black costume. He's like, I was a fan of the original Ditko costume. He said I like when Ditko drew him. It was really black with blue highlights, not blue with black highlights. So I said, Dick, I wanted a black costume. But I was thinking he was going to do that. And Mike Zeck, he said in the first try, came up with that costume. That was his first,
pretty amazing.
That was
first
great.
design.
That is amazing.
And he's like, "What do you think, Jim?" And he's like, "That's great."
Yeah, I'll take it. So, print it.
It also says something about Marvel in the 80s, which I think is the best decade for comic books, by the way, the 1980s. For
I
both
agree.
companies. But, 25 and 30 years earlier, when DC brought back all the Golden Age characters with the same names with different costumes, nobody knew because nobody cared. The comic books were just something you picked up as a throwaway thing in the supermarket or the candy store. Now we're in the mid 80s now, and it's become part of the zeitgeist. These comic books and these characters. So you changed Spider-Man's costume. This is kind of earth shaking.
And he's been on, like I said, record. I just said it before, but this was a marketing thing. This was a joint venture. Mattel was looking for a toy line to compete with superpowers. And
Real fast, if I may, and I'm not disparaging. Doing the research for this podcast, and I learned more about Jim Shooter than I ever knew. And Joe, you probably knew, obviously, growing up, being a little bit older than us, but I did not know that he was almost universally reviled, not only in the industry, but within his own company. And I'm not saying that like people just did not like the way that he was doing things, but you can't argue with the results.
Yeah.
However, there were times, even in the 80s, when I was a kid, and I'd be reading about characters. I'd be reading a character a certain way, and I'd be thinking something, and nothing came of it until years later. I'd be reading something that it was supposed to have been that way, but Jim Shooter said no. It's not fair to criticize a time and an era 30 years later. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Okay, because we were in some weird times in the 80s, as great as it was. So it's not fair to criticize him for that, but I can see where the criticism comes from.
Yeah, I mean, they were told, I think Arco knows this, that in the 80s, Shooter wanted to get rid of Peter Parker, Tony Stark, and Steve Rogers, and have three different people become Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Captain America. He got Rhodey. Rhodey became Iron Man for a very long time because Tony kept falling off the wagon. But they didn't change. They didn't swap out Peter or Cap. So is that true?
They did. John Walker.
John Walker, yeah, that's right. Yeah. For a while,
so and Cap became U.S. agent.
Right.
For a while. But they didn't get rid of him. He made the change. Sometimes you would look back and you say, did he make the change just for the sake of making a change, or did it make sense? In the end, when he ended up leaving in 1987 and then creating the new universe, which was his own pet project, you kind of wonder if it was more ego and hubris rather than a good idea. Because I could tell you, I never read one episode.
Neither did I, Arco. I never read a single
issue. And again, not to disparage, but you're telling me that I need to pick up something brand new after falling in love with something for so long now, or I was in it for a few years. I didn't see the need for it myself. So
at that point, I've been reading Marvel for 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's disparaging. I think, it's one of those things that can be really, really tough when we're talking about artists, right? And not just, I mean, artists, I mean, artists in general, so writers too, of like, where it's this situation where maybe it was hubris or maybe it was ego. And it's also possible it's like, no, saw a direction that I thought would be worth exploring, and it turns out it wasn't worth exploring, right? And we don't always know. It's one of those things sometimes where it's like, and
gotta
sometimes,
try.
right, and sometimes we get good stuff out of ego, and other times we get bad stuff out of good intention. Like, no, I just wanted to try and see what would happen. So, like, but I don't think it's disparaging to say this didn't work for me. It wasn't aligned with what I was interested in. It wasn't aligned with the things that had me fired up about, my passion here. So like, I think it's, it was a miss regardless of whether it was, ego or just, no, I wanted to try something new and it didn't stick, which, you're absolutely entitled to do. And I think we're entitled to say, you were never going to sell me out.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done some research on Jim Shooter, and I know like he's got like there's people who love his time there and people who hate this time. I know there's also a lot of back and forth, especially just the back and forth that goes on between him and Chris Claremont on who killed the Dark Phoenix. Like he would hold that Chris like had that in his mind the whole time. Both of them go back and forth and say like it was always Chris Claremont was said it was the pitch for the story was that Jean Grey was going to die, and then at some point he was going to backtrack, and Jim just held him to it. And so there's like
yes. I would ask him. I would ask him specifically because I believe that his directive was no. She killed 5 billion people. She has to die. Yeah. She has to die. She has to atone. She has to pay. But what I specifically would ask him was your idea always to bring her back in 4 years' time or 5 years' time in the Fantastic Four issue, or did you just find an opening to do that? That's what I would ask.
That's a good question.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think we are always polite to our guests, but there are some questions we have for our
just as fans,
for things like this. And I mean, there's reasons for everything. I don't know if we get straight answers because, like I said, I do know doing some of the research with him that people who have issues with the decisions he made creatively, they'll say one thing and then he'll say another thing, and then like.
I mean, it's 30 years later. He may not remember. 40 years later, he may not remember it. So
it's good point, Arco. Yeah.
But the Secret Wars that we're talking about, I think, was something that I know we got to wrap up in a few moments, but like I think you liked it, Arco. I think my opinion of it is, the second time reading it, I enjoyed it much better the second time, especially getting to do this episode.
Third time reading it, I enjoyed it much more.
And then Chris, I think your opinion is your mileage varies, but you still appreciate the story overall. Yeah. That's my correct interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, I think you nailed it. I think there's I mentioned some lines and some moments that I'm like, I really enjoyed that. I'm glad that I read it. But also I'm older now and they're just different things that I want from stories.
Arco, I have a question for you. Sure. At this time, this is like 1984, right?
84 to 85, yes.
Was Reed Richards aware that Spider-Man, he didn't know he was Peter Parker, but was he aware in the continuity that Spider-Man was basically a scientist?
It's a fantastic question.
I asked that. I'll tell you why I asked the question if you can remember.
Yeah, they've worked together. I don't know that I remember at that time. I know that later on they knew that he was scientifically inclined, and Peter Parker is very good biochemist and biology and chemistry.
Well, maybe that happened with the Venom storyline when Reed was trying to extract the costume out of him.
Maybe a little bit later. But until like in the 90s, nobody knew who the hell he was. He would hide his face no matter what, and even with the Fantastic Four.
I asked that question because I think Shooter left as they put it some money on the floor, whatever the expression is, because as Reed is struggling with this entire mess and how we're going to fight these cosmic characters, get back to Earth. I don't think he uses all the resources that are available to him. And I think, Peter Parker, a.k.a. Scientist Peter Parker, could have been a tremendous help to Reed Richards. So I
entirely possible, but I don't think the opportunity presented itself that they could work together like that. The only two that really did work together was the Hulk and Reed. In the middle part of this series, I believe they were the only two scientists that really worked together.
Right, because he had Banner's brain at the time. Yeah,
exactly. But this was classic wise ass Spider-Man in this.
I thought Spider-Man was probably one of the weaker characters written in this series, along with the Wasp.
It was a little bit. It was a little bit annoying.
Yeah,
actually, when he was. It was a little bit annoying. It was juvenile, really.
On my third rereading of this, I got to tell you, as I said, I think it's a Doom story, but I wrote this down. The Enchantress is a real piece of work. Suffice it to say, she's a true villain whose sense of entitlement, after all, she's a god, makes her a villain you love to hate. We need more villains like her. Yeah. She's nasty and incorrigible and mean. I love the Enchantress in this story. I really do. Yeah. She tortures that Paul water spray too.
Yeah.
Yes,
right? I mean, she's just a Mean person.
As we pointed out in the last one, like, the Wasp's writing was lacking
Oh,
highly.
that's embarrassing.
The Janet Van Dyne stuff was severely lacking, but
Yeah.
there's always things to pick apart. So
Yeah.
well, thank you so much, Arco, for taking us
thanks
for
a
the
lot,
grand tour
Thank
of
you.
Secret Wars.
Yeah.
Took us from one galaxy to another and brought us back to Earth. It's amazing. Absolutely
It's
amazing.
And Joe, and with Joe as co-pilot, Joe,
Thank
you
you.
did a great
Thank
job
you.
filling in gaps, piping in here and there. But like between the two of you,
Grazie,
well done,
grazie.
both of you. Thank you.
Well, listening audience, if you join this tour, well, one, hope by the end of this you've read Secret Wars. If you haven't, you've got a great summary. And I didn't put spoilers in the top, but hopefully, if you're listening to this, you're either read the book or now you know about the book's about. Whatever your thoughts are about Secret Wars, we'd love to hear from you. So whatever way you're listening to this podcast, you can make a comment somehow. You can leave a response. You can reach out to us. You can share your thoughts about it. Of course, I could have not done this episode without everyone else in this room. So once again, thank you, Arco, so much.
Thank
for
you. Thank
the
you.
whirlwind through Battle World and everything else that followed. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome, James. It was great doing this with Arco and Chris, and just having them back again, especially Chris. Chris, we got to talk hockey.
And Chris, thank you. Yes, so happy that you're back on the panel. We missed you, and this time we'll make sure when we leave Battle World, you come with us.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. No, I love and miss you all. I'm happy to be back for this, and then I'm looking forward to some downtime as I wind down school and work and stuff. So I'm looking forward to being back and talking hockey throughout the playoffs, Joe. It's going to be great. But also just looking forward to being back in general. We have so much stuff to get through.
Of episodes.
I know. So to say nothing of the fact that I am actually all caught up on Daredevil, Born Again, and so we got so many things to discuss. Not just Daredevil, but it's made me miss you guys. So anyway,
absolutely.
Miss you, love you, glad I'm back.
This time, like I said, you're not going to hang out with a thing. You're going to come with us. So, and listening audience, like I said, you know where to find us. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll speak to you on the next one.